It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at Miser's Hoard number 4. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. Today, that's Miser's Hoard number 4 from 1983. Hope you enjoy the video. This week we're continuing our look at the fanzine called Miser's Hoard, produced in the United Kingdom. This is the product of John McKeown and others, and it's the size we're used to. It's an orange cover, heavy stock with paper stapled through the middle. And this time they announced a couple of things. They've added a couple more pages. They're up to 28 in total, and also they're now going to a bi-monthly schedule. These aren't actually dated, so you sort of pick up clues about more or less when they were published from the comments in the editorial. And based on last issue's comments and the comments that they produced this on schedule, we think this probably came out around September of 1983. We also have some changes here that we'll get into when we take a look at the table of contents. The first thing you'll notice here on the art on the cover page is by Jeremy Saunders, and it's obviously a sci-fi theme, and they mention that in their editorial, that they're starting to get some varied content, not purely Dungeons and Dragons. And in this particular issue, I'd say more than half the fanzine is something else. As we'll see, science fiction plays a prominent role in that. Let's take a look at the table of contents. The editorial mentions the increase in size. It mentions the bi-monthly publication schedule. It has a couple other little tidbits. One, Nigel Castle, who'd been producing SwordPlay, confirms that he's not going to produce that anymore after the second issue. Had some problems with the printing, it says. And also that freed up a gentleman named John Gibbons, who'd been putting material there to put some material into Miser's Hoard, and he does that here with the lead-in article, which is a diplomatic immunity, which is a really extensive scenario adventure for traveler science fiction. And so they continue to encourage folks to send in, although most of the material continues to be from the local group. We're starting to see here that not all of it is coming from that original group. Taking the initiative is the continuation of the Dungeons & Dragons discussion of how to make some changes to the rules, and this deals specifically with combat and how you set up your combat rounds, which they use the term segments, and it'll be continued in future issues as well. The Enchanted Forest is a Dungeons & Dragons adventure. DragonMeet VI is just a discussion of their trip there. Cult Entry Examinations is for RuneQuest and how you get into cults in that game. The Open Forum is their letters column, and Fanzine Reviews is obviously a discussion of fanzines. We'll cover all those things. John McKeown and Ian McKeown, and I may be mispronouncing their names, continue to be important parts, as are Peter Walker, who's been involved in most of these. Simon Caldwell, John Gibbons, John Watkins, Brian Haunton, and Jeremy Saunders does the art, and then some support with, not with content, I guess, but more with editing and so forth. Richard Osborne and Derek McKeown does production. So let's take a look at the first article, which is Diplomatic Immunity. I don't play Traveler. I played some Star Frontiers, but not a lot of sci-fi. You can see from sort of the page count here, this is a fairly extensive one. I did read it through to get an understanding of what it is. I like it a lot, and I think you could probably figure out a way to translate this to other settings as well. So essentially, you start off, you're in a celebration of some hoity-toity folks in the some realm of the sci-fi empire, and suddenly there's indications of something going wrong. You hear maybe some laser blasters, and the elevator door opens. Out comes this mercenary with some, in this case, some droid soldiers that come with him, who announce to you that they've been hired, and they're basically a coup is occurring, and you all are on lockdown for further notice. They go around, they check people to take away any weapons or anything else they might have on them, as well as turn off any means of communication. Then the majority leave, and they leave a contingent of, like, say, 5 soldiers and robots combined behind to keep an eye on you and basically tell you to stay here. And then the coup, the conflicts are going on somewhere else in the city. And your party is going to try and have to figure out how to escape. So there's the cleverness of figuring out the immediate issue of how to talk to each other and then get out of this room without, being confined by the guards. You could overpower them. You could try to sneak away. It's up to the characters to try and figure out how they might want to do that. And then they know that when their particular group came to this planet, their spaceship had a problem, and so it landed not in the main landing area, but on some side landing area where they don't keep records. And so the thought process is, and I think you probably have to prompt your characters in this regard, that spaceship, probably nobody knows that it's there, and if you could get to that spaceship, you could probably escape the planet and go get reinforcements. And so again, it looks really well done. There's the city area. There's going to be how do you get out of the immediate area? How do you make it through the town without getting caught or picked up? And whether that's through stealth or overpowering the soldiers that are spread around, would be up to the characters how they want to play that. And then ultimately there'll be some type of confrontation when you get to the location of the spaceship to get actually onto the spaceship. Maybe there's something about the spaceship you have to fix or whatever, so there could be some drama there. And then ultimately, do you manage to escape the planet? I think you could change the theme from sci-fi to other things, and utilize certainly the plot idea, and it's a good one long session kind of play. So I liked it quite a bit, even though Traveler's not my bag. Taking the initiative. This is one of those sort of crunchy bits, rule intensive. How do we make, they say D&D, one of the advantages is it's very playable. It's sort of fast combat. And they do that because they don't worry about trying to make it super realistic. And so there's up-teen articles, where people trying to add more realism, and they all have their own ideas of how to make combat a little better than the D&D rules. It's a matter of taste. I'm pretty happy with the quick flow combat. Not a lot about the game is all that realistic to begin with in some respects, so that I don't mind, but these guys did. So they create segments of 3 seconds, and people's actions are divided up into 3 seconds. And then they use a dice roll. The odd thing about the article is it's, in my view, sort of stops halfway through the explanation. So they explain you're going to get a different type of die depending on your class. Clerics, fighters, thieves use a D10. Magic users use a D12. Monsters typically a D10, but if they're faster, they might use a smaller one. And clearly, again, they don't explain it, but I can tell a smaller die is going to be better. If you have a good dexterity, you can shift down to the next smallest die. If you have like a haste spell or potion, you move down to the next smallest die, and that kind of stuff is cumulative. And vice versa, if you're slowed or you have a bad dexterity, you might have to move up. And so that's the general idea, for their article, is that we're going to do these 3-second segments, and that we're going to do use these dies in some way to determine. But then they just stop and they say, and we'll explain how to do this next issue. So we got to wait and see part 2 of taking the initiative, I suppose. Here's it's sort of an advertisement / review all in one little half-page ad here for Citadel. They talk about the brews, which they like. The figures, there's some new orcs from Asgard, and then an example from Torchlight of their dungeon scenery miniatures or castings that you can get. Then we have this Dungeons and Dragons. It's sort of a pick your path type of an adventure where you read a little article and it says if you do X, Y, or Z, turn to this number. And so we have like 8 pages here, 6 or 8 pages of numbered, things that you go through. It's an interesting little adventure. It would be a drop-in sort of one-off type of thing you could run. This is obviously designed for a solo person to do by themselves. I always feel like you can easily modify these things to have a small party, 3 or 4 players. But essentially, someone has stolen something, like this little goblin appears, grabs an item, takes off, you chase him. Long story short, you go into this cave and through this fog, and then you come out the other side, and you've been sort of transmorphed into this little gnome or whatever he is, little tiny pixie-looking guy here on the bottom front page. And so you've lost all your armor, your weapons, your spells, and so that's the starting point. Is you don't have any of that stuff. You're just I guess you'd say fighter type, and you go through the adventure. It seems a little fairy tale-esque from my read through it, but I didn't go through it repeatedly to see all the different options that might have happened. So I think it's okay. Like I said, it would be kind of fun. A DragonMeet VI is just this one page, has some photographs, talks about it wasn't really LARP, but they had a live combat thing. I guess there was a guy sponsored who was the champion, and they said people were trying all day to beat him, but nobody did, as far as he knew. They had a lot of wargaming, some open tables for sort of self-organized D&D games, and a miniature painting contest. So they liked it and said they thought it was an improvement. Things were getting less of a basically giant vendor fair, and more gaming and fun stuff was going on here than maybe in prior years. Cult entry examination for RuneQuest is this idea that, I guess, in the basic rules, you go in, you roll a percentage to see whether you get accepted into the cult or not, and that's it. Just, your die roll determines whether you get in. And he says he didn't think that was fair because some players were really into it, would know all about their cult, but they'd get a bad die roll. And then somebody else would be like, hey, this cult gives you a good skill, so I'll go see if I can join, and they get a good die roll and they're in. And I guess they didn't think it was very fair for the players, plus they thought it was kind of boring. And so they encouraged the referee or dungeon master to get out the description of the cult that a person was trying to join and make up questions like, hey, who's our enemy? What is my special rune? What is my special skill that that you get for joining our cult, etc. And quiz essentially the players / character. And if you got so many questions right, then you could get in. And then if you wanted to advance in level, you have to know more questions on sort of the next quiz. I think that's probably okay. And he said it led to some really fun role playing. Here's the open forum, which is their news. And some interesting stuff. One guy writes in and claims to be a martial arts expert, so he wanted to improve on the Bushido martial combat article. Somebody else wrote in and basically said they thought Miser's Hoard was a very, very good fanzine. And then I wanted to mention a couple of fanzine notes here, right? One, SwordPlay is not going to be continued. I mentioned that. That was also in the editorial. Tempestuous Orifice, they say Stephen Norlage says he's no longer associated with it, but it is going to continue. And I've got those, so at some point we'll take a look at those. And they do mention an interesting thing here, which was you could write to them and a couple of other people and get designs from other people. So I guess some of these people, I don't know if they gave away their own copy or they got a few that they would then sell on behalf of other design producers or what the deal was. But anyway, I like that. I guess zines is how we're supposed to say that. But in any event, it's a good letters column. A lot of guys who wrote these fanzines always complained they never really got any feedback. So it's good to see the guys at Miser's Hoard are, in fact, getting that feedback. And speaking of fanzines, let's talk about the update they have, which is one of my favorite parts of this particular zine. They think Imagine the Professional magazine is finally good. You'll remember they were kind of critical of issue number 1, but by issue 4, they think they're actually turning out a quality product with interesting stuff. DragonLords, they think is one of the best, most professional. Abyss, they think is good that it's not associated with any particular producing company, but also the quality of the printing and the artwork, they said, kind of varies a lot. Grim Reaper, I don't have that one. It's more Tunnels and Trolls focused, I believe, and it's from New Zealand, which is, as they say, one of the things that makes it the most unique. Tempestuous Orifice, they like quite a bit and say it continues to be a good fanzine. Fantasy Advertiser, not so much really a role-playing games zine, but well-produced and covers a number of topics like comics and other things, but they still thought it was kind of worth a look. And then announcing this was issue number 2, but new to them, zine Senseless. It's called the Journal of Senseless Carnage Society. And they really liked it. Because you'll see when we look at those, they have really wacky art on the covers. And then they mentioned some zines that they don't have any comments about, no sort of mini reviews or anything, but they received, just to give you the names. Fantasy Herald, which they'd mentioned previously, 20 years on. Quasits and Quasars, and SEWARS, SEWARS. I only have a couple of those. Those have been pretty hard to find. And Hounds of Avatar as well. So that's it for the discussion of our zines, and that's it for our discussion of Miser's Hoard number 4. Because of those really big scenarios, the D&D and the Traveler, there wasn't a whole lot to discuss in detail with this particular zine, but it's got a lot of really good content. Like I mentioned, the Traveler one, I really liked the theme and the design of that adventure. I thought it was really well done and well executed. And the other one, the D&D one, could be, I think, a fun session if your characters don't mind something that's a little bit silly and irrelevant to your main campaign. So that's it for today. I hope you guys are enjoying the channel. I hope you are subscribed, and if you have some friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way so that they can be subscribers as well. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.